Growing a law firm, as any other professional service business, is no easy fit. Yet Eric Gros-Dubois grew his law firm in the last 26 months from 21 attorneys, 30 attorneys, and his top-line revenue went up by 59%. Tremendous growth in a short period of time. Listen to this episode, learn how Eric is doing it, and what his plans for the future are. Amazing guy, very sharp business mind, definitely worth learning from. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast. And I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to Grow Law Podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Eric Gros-Dubois. Second appearance on this podcast in this many years. Welcome to the show.
Kind of first appearance because last time the camera wasn't working.
Correct.
But that was August 2023, and I'm looking at you right now. It's end of November 2025.
Mm-hmm. It's been a couple of years. There have been many changes.
I don't think I lost any hair.
Many changes happened except for your haircut. The haircut is still the same as it was 2 years ago. What I found really fascinating about you a couple of years ago when I first interviewed on this podcast, and now before we hit the record button, is that you're not just a business attorney. You're not just a business owner. You're incredibly sophisticated business owner who knows his numbers, business numbers, so incredibly well. Where does that come from? Usually when I ask lawyers about their numbers, law firm owners, it takes them a day or two to produce those. You just know things. Where does that come from?
So on the one hand, I keep a spreadsheet for all deposits. We'll call them deposits, right? So we keep track of our trust account and our operating account. And for our trust account, we actually have 4 different ways of tracking it. But the most basic is it used to be an Excel spreadsheet. And then at some point I uploaded it into Google Sheets. And so I've always known my revenue. But then more importantly, I've always known my break-even number. Right? Because my break-even number is my monthly overhead, which I guess I could do it on a quarterly or an annual basis, but I've always felt like monthly was much easier to digest. And so I've always had to know, okay, this is how much money the firm needs to make before I see any profit. And I remember the worst month ever, that was the month I didn't pay myself, right? Because as the owner, I get paid last. And I had to pay my assistant, and I had to take a loan from my family that one month. And I swore I'd never let it happen again. So different conversation, but as soon as I got myself a big line of credit because I'd rather borrow money from the bank and not have to go to my family and ask them for anything. But in any case, so I've always known those 2 numbers, right? How much I've deposited that month and how much I need to make in order to break even. Then I've been, almost from day one, I had an outside bookkeeper that was giving me monthly, quarterly, and annual financial statements. I do have an MBA, and I know how to read a financial statement, which... You
have an MBA. That I didn't know about you.
Oh,
Got it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. So I'm in law school. It's getting towards the end, and I decide that I needed to, I guess, take another year before I joined the workforce. And I discovered that my law school, in collaboration with the business school, offered a 1-year MBA, whereas normal MBA is 2 years worth of credits. Essentially, they gave us a number of matching credits for law classes I had taken. And so it was a little bit of a crash course MBA, but I'm so happy I did it. I am, because, simple things like, and by the way, I know you work with a lot of lawyers. How many lawyers say silly things like, oh, I went to law school because I'm not good at math? Or I went to law school because I don't like numbers. I've even had an associate say, I don't want to talk to the clients about money. That's dirty. That's not why I went to law school. And, I just shake my head because unless you're, I guess, working for the government, it's all a business, right? And if you don't understand, then I'm thinking you, the associate, you, the employee, if you don't understand your role in that business and how, like, are you a cost center or a profit center? And if you're a profit center, how are we measuring that? So I've always tried to like crunch those numbers a little bit deeper. For example, I've always had in the back of my mind that my overhead, which is everything that's not income producing, like, let me rephrase that. My overhead that's attributable to everything that's not income producing. So basically an easy way of doing that is remove the attorney salary, and whatever is left over for your overhead, that number is what you need to keep the lights on, right? That's my paralegals, that's my admin team, my marketing department, my billing department, my rent, my Westlaw, my internet. And so that number, I've always wanted to know, what is that number per attorney? Which in my mind has always been around $10,000 a month. So each attorney has to make back their salary, plus they have to make back $10,000 a month before the firm starts seeing any profit. And so what I've tried to do is always know that number so that then when we do salary negotiations, I can be very transparent. I'm like, okay. And I've always tried to work on the rule of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So theoretically, 10,000 for the overhead, 10,000 for the salary, and 10,000 for the profit.
Fascinating. It is such an asset to you that you have gone through that MBA program, because I'm sure you're far ahead of so many other law firm owners because you went through it and you learned so much about the business side.
I can't really compare myself to, you probably have a better perspective than I do. I've been blessed that my first boss was very business savvy, very numbers oriented. His name is Jeff Katz. He's in Washington, DC. And then my best friend, who I consider my mentor, Brian Barakat, he has a firm here in Miami called Barakat and Bosa. Brian grew up in his family pizza business, right? And as a little boy, he would get a nickel for every cardboard pizza box that he would put together, right? So I think Brian has always been very savvy with numbers and savvy with math. And I was lucky. For the first 5 years of my firm, I was his subtenant. And I would bribe him with his favorite whiskey to basically pick his brain at the end of every day to, because there's one thing that's for certain. They do not teach you how to run a law firm in law school. That is.
Nor should they.
Class. Well, you're right. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. If you want to know my opinion, I think law school should be 1 year, and then you should make people work as an apprentice for a couple of years before they can take the bar. So 1 year to like get the crash course on the Latin and some of the bigger like concepts, and then go work in. And I think California actually allows that. I think California has an apprenticeship bar. Not positive, but I think that's just my opinion.
I do not have opinion on that, obviously, but I think it shouldn't be a requirement. But if you are thinking about starting your own law firm, it is a good idea to go and be an apprentice to a law firm owner who is really good at operating the business. Not practicing law, but the business. You will learn a lot more than you would by just running your business on your own. And you will probably become a lot more successful faster, because you learn from someone who's really good at operating the business, not being a lawyer.
I can tell you that I've seen people go from big law and open up their own firms. And one of the things, I guess you realize, the bigger the organization, the smaller your part in that organization will be.
Yep.
So if you work, for example, in a small law firm, you'll see everything. You'll see how the invoices are made, how the intakes are done, how the calls, how the filing, everything. If you work in a giant law firm, you might not even know where the invoices are made. Like 100%. They could be made in a different building. So then to go out on your own, I feel like it was an advantage of mine that I worked for two small law firms because, I didn't really have to recreate the wheel. I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing what I saw those guys do and just do it my way.
Yeah, but most small law firms are not very sophisticated nor very successful businesses. That's why I'm thinking working for someone who is a great business owner operator, law firm owner operator, would give you a huge advantage, because like you said, law schools do not teach you this, nor I believe, nor should they. They give you knowledge of law, and that's what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to teach you business. So if you want to learn business, you can take an MBA program and learn quite a bit about business and become better equipped for starting a business. But just again, being an apprentice, I feel like it's a lot more valuable than just sitting through a class, whether today it's a virtual class or in-person class, and learning theory rather than practicing.
I also attributed a lot. After about 2 years, so the first 2 years, right, you're just trying to get off, you're trying to stay alive, really. And after about 2 years, I had a little operation. I think I had 1 or 2 associates. I had a paralegal. I had a couple assistants. And so there was a little machine with like kind of steady cash flow. That's when I thought I could afford to hire a business coach. And it's one of those things where I wish I had done it earlier, because having that resource of somebody, and I want to say my business coach wasn't even a lawyer. They were from the accounting world, but more specifically, they had a lot of experience dealing with businesses.
It's a great business advisor is such a shortcut that you are unlikely to find anywhere else.
Absolutely.
They will help you to not make many of the mistakes that you would make otherwise. But going back to the thought that you're so good with numbers and you know numbers incredibly well, before we hit the record button, I asked you a few questions and you just pulled up that data. You either knew it or you pulled up that data, and that just impressed me so much, because to me, the love language of business is the numbers. If you know your numbers, you can manage them, you can improve them. If you don't know your numbers, the opposite is also true. You know your numbers incredibly well. And here are some of the numbers that you shared with me before we hit the record button. Is back in 2023, in the summer, which I now live in Florida. So my summer is now forever, which is amazing. I love it here so much. So back in July of 2023, you had 21 attorneys on staff. Last month, in October of 2025, you had 30 attorneys on staff, and your revenue, so your head count of attorneys went up about 45, 47%. Your revenue has gone up by 59%. Talk to us, what engineered that level of growth in 2 short years?
So I don't really ever think about it in terms of like, 2 years ago, the firm was 10 years old. In fact, you and I were talking right after our 10th anniversary. We founded in 2013 in the summer, so it was 2023 in the summer. Sometimes I feel like it's like a giant ship that it's really hard to make hard turns, right? It's really hard so mostly we're just pivoting. Or, if I'm going to make a big course correction, it's going to take a long time to even turn the bow to where I want to go. And so, I feel like in terms of like, obviously we all experienced a dramatic change with COVID. And the biggest change that in our business was all of a sudden the phone started ringing off the hook. And what we attributed that to back in 2020, 2021 was everyone was sitting at home. Nobody was out in the world networking. And so if they wanted something, they just went to Google. And so our word of mouth referrals and our repeat business, and whether that's word of mouth from a client or from a friend or from a referral partner or from someone I just met, that number always stayed about the same and was growing at a slow but steady rate. Whereas before we were getting no Google or internet leads, and all of a sudden those numbers went through the roof. And so all of a sudden people were Googling, how do I do this? How do I do that? And they were finding all these blogs that we'd been writing. So that's another funny thing. Little did I know that when I used to have these law students, I still do, but they'd come to me and like, Eric, do you have anything for me to work on? And if I didn't, I would say, hey, why don't you write a blog about whatever that last meeting we just had was, right? And so whatever that last meeting was, I'm like, let's find a blog topic from that. The client had a question about an operating agreement. Okay, let's write a blog about operating agreements. The client had a question about trademarks. I'm like, okay, let's write a blog about trademarks. And so all of these blogs were just accumulating over time on our website to the point we had over 3,000. And then COVID happened. Everyone starts Googling, and all of a sudden my blogs are the answers to all these questions. And so we had a significant spike in intakes. We had to then change a little bit of our culture here, because before I was the only one doing intakes. It finally got to a point where that had to change, because like there were just too many potential client consultations to just work around my schedule. So we started creating an incentive culture for some of the associates to actually do the consultations. And they, at first, sometimes, not all of them, they'd give some pushback. They'd be like, if you make me do these intakes, how am I supposed to hit my billable goal? I'm like, okay, well, how about this? What if you get 10% of whatever the initial retainer is as a commission for you signing it up? And that was a small pivot. So when you and I spoke, it was 2023. I feel like we were coming out of COVID. We were back in the office, and yet we still had this really high volume of, what was the number I gave you? 205
245 leads
in the month of August of 2023.
2023.
So then, and you and I were joking, when we spoke in August of 2023, I don't think I had ever heard of ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was a word that I had said yet. And now I just went to Turkey for my honeymoon. That's another thing. I got married since you and I spoke. And we use ChatGPT for everything. We're like, make me a walking tour, help me translate this menu. Literally, we went to a pharmacy and everything's in Turkish. We took a picture with the ChatGPT picture feature, and it translated and then told us how to use the medication.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're living in this new world where then another corollary of that is people use Google differently than they used to. Mm-hmm. Already it changed in just a year or two.
Yep.
Where now Google is taking my answer and just giving it to people without making them click on my website. So like the nature of how people are using the internet's changing. And then as a firm, like we've made a conscious decision, we do annual retreats, and the theme this year, we took the whole team to Nashville, and we had a day of like seminars that I think this year we did, and without a professional speaker, we created our own agenda. And the theme of the conference was taking our firm from being the entrepreneur law firm, which was our branding for a really long time, to the enterprise law firm, and what that looks like and how different it is to service an enterprise than it is to service an entrepreneur. Or, another way of thinking about it, an owner-operated business, the relationship with the person who's going to write the check is very different than when you're dealing with an enterprise where there's a board of directors and the person writing the check, it's not their money. It doesn't come out of their pocket. And how the different relationship and dynamic that is. So I think that's probably the biggest change, to get from 21 lawyers to 30 lawyers. But at no point did I feel like there was a big decision moment. It was always like the accumulation of lots of little decisions, which I'm trying to explain to one of my employees. I'm like, look around. Everything you see is the accumulation of probably 10,000 decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything you see, all the stuff, like which quality paper do we buy? Which vendor do we use for the pens? Which internet provider? It's all just adds up. And so, to unwind that, there's days where I kind of think it'd be fun to start from scratch, like taking what I know now, like burn it all down and rebuild it, knowing what I know now and avoiding all the mistakes I made.
Would you ever consider selling your law firm while you're still relatively young?
Yes.
Is there a number you have in mind?
I do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's what it's worth. Round numbers, I think my share would have to be more than $10 million.
What would you do if you sold it today?
I would take a year to travel the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd get bored. And then I would probably consider becoming a consultant to help people do what I did.
How far away do you think you are from that point?
Less than 5 years.
Would you?
I don't know. I have another goal. The goal is to keep building this thing. And the number I have is 50 associates by the time I turn 50. So
how old do you know?
I turned 45. So I guess you and I need to stay in touch, and we'll see how as I keep getting closer to that goal.
So your headcount went up nearly 50% in 2 years. And to get to 50, it's another 80% or so, 70%.
The problem is, I'll just use an example. I think I looked last year that I netted 5 attorneys last year, but I lost 11, which means I had to onboard 16, right? And so that's another thing. Like my firm skews very young. And so we have a lot of people who are still figuring out what they want to do for their careers. And it's not uncommon as a lawyer for someone after maybe 5 or 6 years to realize that they want to try a different practice area, or maybe they want to try a different city. What prompted you to move to Florida?
Oh, so many things. One of them is that I lived in Chicago for 31 years, didn't love it for a day.
Oh.
Another thing, I had a baby number 3, and he had some health issues, which he thrived in Florida, really hated Chicago winter. So that prompted that decision, and we made it very quickly. We were here in January. And we were like seriously here in March, kind of like living here full time. And then we're like, all right, let's just get rid of all of our stuff in Chicago and make a full-time move here. And it was very, very quick. And Fort Lauderdale, I love you so much.
Yeah.
I love my life here every single day. Whereas in Chicago for 31 years, I never loved it for a day. So that was a decision. But I'm curious about engineering that growth from 30 associates to 50 associates, getting to the point where your equity in the business is sellable and worth $10 million. And all of that can be accomplished. Well, your goal to grow the headcount is within 5 years.
So 3 ways known to men to grow a business: increase number of clients or customers or patients, increase an average transaction amount, like how much people are spending with you, and increase frequency of those transactions. If you had a crystal ball and you would look at it and you would say, well, this is how we're going to do it in these 5 years, what would you have to accomplish to get there in these 5 years by the time you turn 50?
Again, I think mostly it'll be incremental adjustments. And I think the trajectory, I can tell you where I see, and it's really nice that you and I are connecting after 2 years, because that's a nice amount of time to be able to reflect and be like, oh, look, like this is how much we grew. And then like can think about the revenue goals we had back then. Funny thing is, I think my break even is higher than what we did in August of 2020,
Total revenue.
2023.
You mean your total revenue in August of 2023 was lower than your break-even point today?
Yes.
Congratulations. Great growth.
Well, in any case, I think the path we're on is fewer clients at a higher value. So maybe if, like, I guess another way of thinking about it, keep the number of clients the same, but increase the transaction amount.
Can you engineer that?
I hope so. And I do believe we're on that path, where, just as an example, and I'll use easy numbers. There was a time where I was signing up new cases for $1,000. It was what we were doing, and that's where we were in the market. I think it was commensurate with our level of experience and with the budgets of the types of clients we were getting. Now our minimum retainer is $7,500.
Yeah.
And now I've priced myself out of a lot of the market, but maybe that's okay. There's that old saying, or the meme even, where the client says, well, now that I've invested $500, I expect to be constantly updated, and I want frequent in-person meetings, and I want to know every step of the way. And then you've got the guy that gives you $50,000 and says, call me when it's done.
100%. It definitely applies to our industry, which is marketing. It is the larger the client, the larger the check, the more they care about results. They want to see it every 30 days. They do not need updates every week. They just need the right needles to move in the right direction every single month. Way fewer headaches. I'm also reminded.
And that's exactly right. It's the less headache. That's what they're buying, right? They're buying the peace of mind. So again, I think we're going to continue that direction and that trend, which is actually really funny. So I had a case come across my desk that was really small, and I went to my office. We have a group, WhatsApp, for all the lawyers, and I said, does anyone know someone who maybe is just out of law school and just opened a law firm? And one of my younger attorneys, I think she's a second-year attorney, she goes, yeah, some of my classmates just opened their firm. I'm like, great, connect me. And sure enough, I asked them, I'm like, are you guys taking $1,000 retainers? And they're like, yeah, we'd love that. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to start referring you all that work, because I don't want it anymore.
That's awesome. I'm also reminded, so my partner and I, we have 2 business advisors that come from very different backgrounds. Both are very successful. One of them he founded and built and sold his marketing company. And his whole business model was predicated on every year we have the same number of clients, but they're spending significantly more with us. When he sold his business, he had 40 clients who spent over $40 million with his firm. So his average client was spending over $1 million a year. These were enterprise accounts. But when he started 14 years prior to that average check was $25,000 a year. So he went up by more than X in 14 years. And he was also an MBA graduate. I think he's from Wharton. And he was just, my whole goal for growing the business was not quantity, but quality of the accounts.
40X is incredible.
X in 14 years. He had very, very sophisticated chief of sales. Howard Diamond, great mind, is still in the industry. That's what he did. Will go out there and build solid relationships with larger and larger. Every year their accounts grew to the point where they got enterprise accounts, and they're like, this is the pinnacle of it. I do not want to grow it anymore. Let's sell it.
So, we're living in this transformative time with AI. And also, I think a lot of the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff, quote unquote, and I'm going to go quote unquote easy stuff because I just want a simple operating agreement. I'm like, do you even know what that is? Like, do you have any idea how important that thing is? Do you really want to be cheap about that thing that's so important? But that's the world we live in. So what I foresee is a lot of the lower level, entry level legal work is already going away. I already see it. So we used to do dozens of new company setups a month. Now we're doing a handful, right? Because I think a lot of people have figured out they can use LegalZoom. They can do it themselves. They have a friend who showed them the website. And so the unsophisticated, we'll say that, work is going to go away. That's okay, because what's going to be behind or left behind and where the opportunities are is the higher sophisticated work, the work that does require a true specialist. And that specialist might be using AI to help them, but you still need this. I mean, are you ready to walk into a doctor's office and take a prescription from a computer? I'm not, but am I okay with going into a doctor's office and having the doctor be assisted by computers? Absolutely. So what that really means is, again, I think that for a law firm like mine to continue to survive, we can't be offering the low-level, entry-level
I agree
service.
with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the subject of taking medical advice from AI. I think we're practically there for a lot of people. Let me give you an example. I mentioned that I had a baby. He has what's called atopical dermatitis, which is a skin condition, which is very severe in Chicago and very mild in Florida. We went to see a specialist, and as we were driving to see the specialist, I had 6 questions that I asked of ChatGPT as we were driving. And then once we arrived, I asked the same 6 questions of the specialist who's been practicing pediatric dermatology for 30 years. The answers were the same, 100% the same. The only thing that ChatGPT couldn't do that the doctor could was recommend the medicine and write a prescription for it. But I think that, as you said, a lot of easy work is going away.
Yeah.
Because that's not what our big, beautiful brains are supposed to do. And so it will go to ChatGPT. Some more sophisticated work will also go to ChatGPT, because some sophisticated people will choose to use AI to get that stuff done. But when it comes to things that are not rudimentary, that are really complex, like those things are going to stay with professionals. And I think I'm trying to make a case for you, Mr. or Mrs. Law Firm owner, as you're listening to this and hearing Eric talking about growing his business, pivoting toward larger accounts. Apply that to your business as well if you can, because the stronger you are, the stronger your balance sheet is, which means more assets you have on the balance sheet, more liquidity, more cash you have there, and fewer liabilities. When things will get difficult, as they inevitably do, like, you will be able to persevere and stay in the business while a lot of your competition may be going by side. They'll be out and you will still be in because you've prepped for it. I've done it with my prior business, survived great recession, actually thrived through great recession in the financial services market, which would be incredibly hard, except that my partner, who was a brilliant guy, he saw the writing on the wall, and we talked about how to prepare for it, and we're very well positioned for that recession. And same thing will apply to law firms. And I think the AI threat to demand for legal services is very, very, very real. And if you're not taking it seriously, regardless of what practice area you may be in, you should take it very seriously, because the advice that ChatGPT is dispensing today for medical things and for legal things, it's going to be spot on more often than not. And people will listen.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that, I mean, when I advise young people, especially like in law school, I tell them, work on your public speaking, work on your bedside manner, work on your emotional intelligence, work on, work on the things that can't be easily replaced by a computer. And so, we have both sides in our firm. We have the transactional attorneys that are sitting there behind a computer typing away. I'm like, I'm worried about them because AI is coming for those jobs versus we have the, like sitting with the clients and explaining things to them, in a comforting way, or going to court and doing oral arguments. Like these are roles that are still going to be around, I think, for the rest of my career.
I agree. Eric, imagine that scenario. You sell your law firm for $10+ million. You take that 1 year off, then you're bored. You decide to start another one. What would it be?
It's funny. My mentor said that he would probably move to Colorado because he really likes to go skiing. And then he says that he knows all the mistakes not to make, and he could probably rebuild the same thing in half the time, probably even less.
You would go to business law once again?
It's interesting. By the time you're 45, you only know a certain number of things, right? So, I comfortably know 4 different practice areas. And so I could rebuild an estate planning law firm, or I could rebuild a corporate law firm, or I could rebuild a commercial litigation firm. Back in the very, very, very beginning of my career, I imagined being a country lawyer with, just writing wills, maybe be the only lawyer in a small town somewhere. I don't know. It's not the path I ended up on.
I predict that practice area is going to take the hardest hit from AI.
Wills and trusts. Again,
It's very prescriptive.
the other side is probate and guardianship, right?
Sure,
Probate and
absolutely.
guardianship, you got to go to court, you got to know the procedures, and in a lot of places, you got to know the judge. I don't disagree with you, and I think that most attorneys in that space are already using AI, right? And it's just a matter of when the public catches up with realizing how much they don't need a lawyer for.
Yeah, 100%. I think that prescriptive, many years ago, I dated an oncologist. This is before anyone spoke of AI. But she told me, Sasha, one day a computer is going to do a better job than I will, and I will be happy because it will work me out a job as it will make fewer mistakes.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm like, why? Why, Sarah, would this work this way? And she's like, it's very simple. My job is very, very, very simple. I have to know a lot, but the job is very simple. I ask a question, I get an answer. Based on the answer, I ask a second question. Based on the answer to the second, I keep on asking questions until I determine what type of test they need. And then they go away and they get the test done. And then I read the test results. And that's how I decide on what to do next. And she's like, a computer who can ask questions and process answers can do the same thing, except computers never underslept. It's never tired, doesn't need a break. It will definitely make fewer mistakes. So I want to be worked out of this job. I want computers to do this with excellence. She was an excellent oncologist. And I think when it comes to prescriptive law, like estate planning, I think that that's exactly what AI is already doing. My business partner put together his estate plan with ChatGPT. It was very thorough. Very, very, very thorough. And very, very quick. And why he did it, he just likes to experiment with technology and how it works. And at the end of it, he was like, oh, it's done. I just want it like notarized and make sure that the lawyer looks over it, just make sure that it's good. They spent a few $100 for a review, and that was it. So I keep thinking that if I ever went into law, and I'm not going to become a lawyer, but in Arizona, a non-lawyer can own a law firm today. And I think other states will at some point follow.
Washington, D.C. is one of them.
It's already there? I haven't heard that yet. But
yeah,
it will probably happen over time, over a decade or two. And private equity will roll in. And if I was part of private equity or just wanted to own a law firm, I think I'd certainly go into family law because people just get crazy when it comes to divorces.
And it's very emotional and it's very personal. And also think about who your clients are. Your clients are going to be real people.
Yeah.
That's one of the downsides of moving to enterprise law is that my clients a lot of times have no stake in the game. The person writing the check has no emotional connection to that situation or to me, versus if you're in family law, like it's all personal.
Yeah. But the flip side of it is in corporate law, if it's enterprise clients, because they have no stake in it, they will write that check freely. Yeah. And they will not concern themselves with very, very much whether it's X or X times 2 or times 3 or whatever it may be. So I think there are definitely some serious pros for being in the business that you're in. Plus, there is such a great continuity. The one attorney that I bug a few times a year, the only one, is our business attorney. I have never had more than one case with any one attorney ever, except for Andrew Lopez, who I talk to 4, 5, 6, I don't know how many times I talk to him a year because the business is growing, it's evolving. There are evolving needs, and we probably, maybe he doesn't bill us every month, but 6, 7, 8 times a year for sure because things come up all the time. I did get divorced once, but that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So that was it. No continuity there. So I think business law is probably the only practice here that actually has continuity, which is amazing.
Which I've actually really enjoyed. And then one thing that, it's great is I've had some clients who've been with me for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, just before this, I got reached out to by a client. I hadn't talked to him in 2 or 3 years, but I've been, every 2 or 3 years, he has something come up every 2 or 3 years. and he's one of my old business clients from 20. I think I signed him up in December of 2013. You ready for that?
So that's what, just a few months after you started the firm.
That's right. So the birthday is June 3rd, 2013.
Okay. Eric, I wish you luck on your journey toward hopefully one day selling your firm and getting the 10 million plus out of it.
Now that you're in Florida, we should meet in person, and we should definitely stay in touch. And it was fun to do a check-in after 2 years and take a walk down memory lane.
We'll do another one here in 2 to 3 years and see how things evolve and how much closer you are to that goal of 50 associates. I know that you didn't tell me that it's a goal to sell the business, but you would sell it for that amount. But the goal is to get to 50 in the next 5 years.
I'll tell you the one fear I have about selling. I don't think I would make a very good employee anymore.
I don't think anyone would.
Because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll tie the owners down for 3 years with some sort of earnout or employment agreement.
I think it's a lot easier than you think. I have a number of friends who sold their businesses across numerous industries to private equity. When you partner up with the right private equity and you know what you're doing, they'll let you be. Nice. They'll talk to you once a quarter. That's it. Yeah. So you feel like you are the CEO of your business, and you just set realistic, maybe stretch, but realistic goals for the next year, and they check in with you once a quarter. Or if you want to talk to them more frequently than that, you'll get to talk to them more frequently than that. Or many of them will just let you walk away within 3 to 6 months, depending on how your business is set up. One of the tests, and this is what my partner and I do, despite the fact that we do not want to sell our business, but every year we take more continuous time off to stress test our business. How well would it operate without one of us being there? And we ask our direct reports to keep a list of things that they couldn't solve because we weren't there. And the lists are ridiculously short.
I think I'm already there. The best week of, I want to say it was in 2024, but the best week of the year in 2024, I was gone. I didn't take a phone call, and they signed up more work. Systems were running, and I don't think anybody bothered me. So, that's just part of the evolution, right? And building that team, and maybe we can talk more about that next time.
Absolutely. The one last thing that I do want to note before we hit the record button, you mentioned that a substantial percentage of new business still comes to the firm because of you. Not because you're actively out there trying to generate business, but you're well known now. So that if you were talking to private equity, that could be one of the handicaps where you have to stay here for a while. So it's like you have to generate other people who can attract that new business for you, for your firm to be a greater value to private equity.
It's a very fair point that I will definitely spend some time working on.
I'm glad that I could contribute a little bit. Eric, thank you so much for sharing the insights, and congrats on your success and recently getting married.
Yes, right here.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Take care.